Thank you. We are now going to begin again with the recording. Welcome back. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 8, Treasury and Investment Strategy and Potential Indicators 2024-25 to 2029-30. And Scott Walker, the Strategic Lead for Finance and Business Support, is going to introduce the report.
Thank you, Provost, and good afternoon, councillors. This report sets out the Treasury and Investment Strategy and Prudential Indicators for financial years 24-25 through to 29-30. Consideration of this strategy today meets two requirements. Firstly, it is a requirement of our own approved Treasury management practices, and secondly, a requirement of the CITFA Code of Practice for Treasury Management. The investment strategy details the permitted investments of the Council and outlines the risks associated with the expected investment activities. For the avoidance of doubt, the information contained in this report today includes the impact of the updated capital budget approved by Council last Wednesday. Section 4 provides an update on the Council's Treasury position as at the 29th of February, with total net debt of £681.4 million at an average rate of 2.79%. This section also includes the projected borrowing requirement over the next 6 years of the approved capital budget for both the General Fund or Composite Budget and the Housing Revenue Account. Within Section 5, there is commentary on the prospect for interest rates. With the borrowing requirement over the next year, it may be more advantageous to undertake short-term borrowing until longer-term rates show signs of reducing. This approach will be kept under review, and this is further underlined in Section 6. The submission of an annual investment strategy is a requirement of the Local Government Investment Scotland Regulations 2010, and this is covered in Section 7. There are no proposals to make changes to permitted investments for 24-25. The current limits ensure that the Council maintains sufficient liquidity and a spread of investments. The current limits ensure that the Council maintains sufficient liquidity and a spread of investments, whilst the specific counterparty list is reviewed continuously in light of credit rating changes and other market information. Paragraph 7.8 sets out the investment types that we will use in 24-25, including money market funds, bank deposits on instant access or notice terms, fixed deposits of up to 12 months with banks, and other local authority lending. Section 8 provides an update on investment properties, and Section 9 provides information on debt rescheduling, which is unlikely in the current circumstances. Section 10 provides information on the Prudential Code. Importantly, the decisions of Council last week to apply 1% of Council tax from Council tax income from 25-26 ensures that the Council's capital programme remains prudent, sustainable and affordable. All of the prudential indicators included in Section 11 and Appendix 5 comply with the CITFA Code of Practice for Treasury Management. The setting of an appropriate Treasury Management strategy is essential in ensuring that the Council is not exposed to undue risks and costs. The strategy outlined in this report is designed to ensure that the Council achieves the best possible returns on its borrowings and investments, while seeking to minimise risk in light of prevailing and forecast market conditions. Happy to take questions, Provost.
Thank you very much, Mr. Walker. Members, are there any questions on the report? Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Provost. And can I thank Scott Walker, John Jennings and the rest of the finance team for what is once again a very thorough and detailed report, and also congratulate, I think more formally, Scott into his position as Head of Finance and Section 75 Officer. And it's going to be great working with you going forward. I just want to ask one question, but I may require a supplementary. It's on 6.2. It's where we're referring to alternative sources of finance, and that's not going to refer to Levelling Up Fund. I might in a minute and comment, but it refers to the Public Works Loan Board, that's the Treasury, to the UK Infrastructure Bank, and there's also the Scottish National Investment Bank. But further on, we point out about market instruments, and alternative sources of borrowing will be evaluated and considered. Could I just ask Scott, or maybe we can discuss this later, but how far down the road are we on that? what potential sources might exist? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Clearly, we wouldn't turn away any opportunities in terms of funding. We'll evaluate any opportunity that comes through us. Many of these funding routes have certain conditions or certain criteria that need to be evaluated, tested to make sure we are ticking their boxes, that they're ticking our boxes. So, I mean, happy to work with you going forward, but we're turning nothing away at this stage in terms of alternatives to make sure that we're able to take forward the capital budget.
Right, just as a quick supplementary, and it's more to make a point as well, but I don't think the Scottish Government has much influence here. I think it's more UK Government Financial Conduct Authority. And I'm going to mention two words that might, but it's pension funds. And it's pension funds and perhaps also some higher value charitable trusts. Has there been any guidance given from the UK Government or any discussions about how you can match up pension funds with investment in local authority infrastructure? And the reason is because it seems such a clear thing to be able to do without investment direction, that you can match long-term liabilities with long-term returns. And there seems to be real possibilities there. Thanks.
So I think, as I said earlier, we would not turn away from any funding. Obviously, pension funds are looking for a return. We would need to be able to generate that return, or they would not be interested in working with us. But we will work with anyone who's likely to have similar objectives in terms of taking forward our capital budget.
It's just that, yeah, the funds that are available are very significant indeed, and there does seem to be real potential perhaps going on that front, and it has been raised as a possibility by UK, I think, government ministers previously. Thanks.
Thank you. Bailey Ahern, and can I just remind all members to use the afternoon chat, please? Thank you.
Thank you. My question is also on paragraph 6.2, and we've spoken a lot about the best route is PWLB borrowing, and then we're looking here about the issues of PWLB interest rates being higher than the bank rate moving forward. Can I just get clarity of what you class as short and long-term borrowing, and is the PWLB still valid for long-term borrowing? Because if you look at the table that was on page 221, it's probably not the route to go. And do you then look at moving borrowing that we've got that to lower interest rates? I hope that's clear, but I just don't understand the distinction, because we were always told that PWLB was better than the bank rate, but when you look at that table, the bank rate's actually lower. I don't know if that's clear or not.
Okay, so we'll evaluate all the options available to us. Traditionally, the PWLB has offered the best rates over the longer term. I think, as the report suggests, we'll probably be looking to go shorter over the next couple of years, while interest rates are still at their peak, maybe 5 to 7 years till we get over the hump. But then we'll probably be looking to go back to PWLB for the longer term certainty that it gives the council in terms of funding the capital budget. But there are other options out there in terms of some of the organisations Councillor Donaldson mentioned, who offer some preferential rates if you are meeting the same criteria they're looking to achieve. So we're not turning anything down at this stage. We are examining all options on the table in terms of funding the capital budget.
Just a quick one, do you class anything over 7.5 years then as long term?
It's quite subjective, but yeah, 5 to 7 years is probably mid-term, and beyond that, yeah, we would go longer term.
Thank you. Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, my question relates to 11.3. It's to do with the loan charges and the net revenue stream. I know it says that we're going to go from 6.1% up to 9.9% in 2028-29 in terms of the percentage of the revenue budget that we're going to be spending on the loan charges. Now, I've gone through the figures with you, and I see it's possible to achieve that and to fund the 1.274 billion that we're borrowing by the 1% per annum charge back from or going back into the capital fund. But could you identify for me the sort of levels that 6.1% going up to 9.9% are in terms of the £1 million payable for the loan charges?
The 9.9% referred to in the report is at the peak of our borrowing, and that includes all borrowing. So it includes our composite or general fund borrowing, it includes our housing revenue account borrowing, but it also includes elements of PFI, so the Public Financial Initiative Schools, the IL schools, etc. It also includes the prudential borrowing that's done through the rest of the council capital fund, where we're funding capital projects from existing revenue budgets. So the 9.9% is about £40 million in total when you add all of those elements together in 28-29.
And I presume the model is based upon the current commitments to capital projects. So presumably we can't commit to anything above that, or else that's going to push us above the 9.9%. Is that correct?
So any further commitments on top of the existing approved capital budget would take us above the 9.9%, yes.
Thank you. Mr. Leader, would you like to move?
Thanks, Provost. Thanks, Mr. Walker. Councillors, a requirement of SIPFA's Code of Practice for Treasury Management is that our annual Treasury and Investment Strategy is approved by full council. The consideration of this strategy today fulfills that requirement. Our Chief Finance Officer has provided elected members with an update on the specifics of the report, and on that basis, you may be pleased to hear that I will keep my remarks brief. Specifically, we are being asked to approve our 6-year Treasury strategy to 29-30, approve the permitted investment and investment strategy for 24-25, approve our property investment strategy for 24-25, and approve the prudential indicators for 24-25 to 29-30. Finally, Provost, just last week, the Council took the bold, proactive decision to increase capacity in our loan charges budget from 24-25, taking it both from existing resources and from future council tax revenues. With the consequences of our strategy for funding our investment plans reflected in the report before us today, I welcome confirmation that even with such an ambitious capital investment programme, our capital budget remains affordable, sustainable and prudent. So I'm happy to move the report.
Thank you very much. Deputy Leader to second.
Happy to second, Provost.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments on the report? Councillor Donaldson.
Okay, and just say I very much welcome and support this report. I think it's an important one in terms of the link between our capital and revenue budgets, and it's almost the kind of the glue that holds these two aspects together. Obviously, I welcome the 5 million that we appear to be receiving in levelling up funding. Don't have further details on that. But I think one thing should be stated, and that is these funds are paid for by Scottish taxpayers, as well as taxpayers south of the border. They're paid for by Perth and Kinross taxpayers. And let's also not overlook the fact that south of the border in England, there are real major problems in local government, not just in Birmingham or Nottingham or Woking, but also in Surrey and Kent and Hampshire. And I think the UK government is going to have to take measures to resolve the problem on the front line in terms of local services. That may yet have for us benefits in terms of Barnett consequentials. I do just want to make the point, though, and I think it's a fair point. The problem with local government south of the border and in Scotland is not that we have too many diversity officers. And bluntly, that is just a total diversion from the real and substantive problems that do exist. Coming back to the capital programme, I would refer to 10.3 and also under the Prudential Code. And we state quite clearly with the approved ring fencing of a 1% increase in council tax, we state the council's capital programme remains sustainable and affordable, and that is from officers. And let's also realise and recognise that that capital programme is not wasteful expenditure. It is on Perth High School. It is on the Cross Tay Link Road, although one or two will have differing points of view on that project. It is on Blairgowie Recreation Centre, where Councillor McEwen over many years has fought for that to come about. It is on things like Comrie Flood Protection Scheme, and it's also, and we shouldn't forget, 3 weeks and 3 days today, Perth Museum will open, and that will, I believe, along with the art gallery, provide a major boost to the local economy. So I think that will suffice, but I think we just don't allow for doom and gloom, and we have this massive debt mountain. The key thing is investment in infrastructure and projects that will assist and help to grow the local economy, and that's what matters. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Provost. Yeah, I take a slightly different point of view, strangely. I think it is affordable. We can afford to do it, but it will be at the expense of putting 1% of council tax each year into the capital fund in order to fund this. So it can be made sustainable, but it comes at a cost that we're actually going to have to see either cuts in services or 1% added to council tax each year. In terms of prudency, I've come into the council, these decisions have already been made. Personally, I don't think some of them have been prudent, so I think the Cross Tay Link Road may have been a mistake in terms of the short-term benefits. We should be looking at postponing that, perhaps. The point is the investments have been made. It is affordable, it is sustainable, but I reserve my judgment in terms of whether we can keep to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Leader of the Council, do you wish to say anything in summing up?
No, thanks.
Sorry.
Councillor Duff was wanting to comment. That's why he kind of caught me out there.
Councillor Duff, you can come in.
Thanks. It was just the way to take the opportunity to thank the officers for the report. It's always a very comprehensive one and goes into great detail about our finances and financial strategy, etc., etc. I think it also shows what can be done if local government is properly financed. And we're just a week away from our budget, where we all lamented the lack of funding for local government that comes from the Scottish government. So let's not forget and put all the blame down south. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. I assume you would now like to sum up.
No, I think we're working well together, and I'll forgo the chance to start a joust. I'm quite happy to receive funding from anybody, because I think all of us in here look to do the best for our residents of Perth and Kinross, and we'll take money from anywhere, and bemoan the fact from whence we don't get money as well equally. So I'll not say any more.
Thank you very much. On that note of consensus, can we agree the report? Thank you very much. Item 9. UK City of Sanctuary bid and commitment to resettlement. I'd like to invite Elaine Ritchie, the new strategic lead for housing and communities, to introduce the report, and welcome Elaine in your new post.
Yeah, thank you, Provost. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Baileys. The purpose of this report is to seek approval from members on becoming a UK City of Sanctuary member with an accompanying commitment to settle a minimum of 20 people seeking sanctuary each year. Perth Kinross has become a home to a number of different groups of people seeking sanctuary from war, persecution or other troubles in their home countries in recent years through the various resettlement programmes. To support officers working with these programmes and to ensure we are offering all the available support and assistance for a positive integration and resettlement into our communities, this report seeks approval to become a member of an umbrella organisation called the City of Sanctuary UK. In addition to seeking membership, this report also seeks approval on a commitment to resettle a minimum of 20 people seeking sanctuary each year. Immigration policy is reserved and therefore administered by the UK Government through the Home Office and the Department for Housing, Levelling Up and Communities. There is funding available for post-arrival resettlement support, including housing and education costs. Whilst there are considerable pressures on our housing supply, it is considered that supporting the resettlement of 20 people, which would likely represent 4 to 6 families in suitable properties, would be sourced from the private rented sector in line with our current arrangements, which have proved to be successful for both landlord and the families involved. By becoming a recognised area of sanctuary through the UK City of Sanctuary membership, we can build on the positive examples of support and opportunities while enhancing our positive reputation as a welcoming place for new arrivals. Committing to the resettlement of at least 20 people per year will provide the certainty needed to create a permanent resettlement team, again reinforcing our ambition to become a place of sanctuary and build on the positive outcomes we have achieved to date and enable Perth Kinross to remain welcoming and a safe place for people seeking sanctuary. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, are there questions? Councillor Forbes first, please.
Thanks, Provost. Elaine, congratulations on your new job and look forward to working with you through housing and can't remember the name of the committee, I'm sorry, social wellbeing. But congratulations, well deserved. Can I just ask about this proposal? And we do a huge amount, as you just referenced already in Perth Kinross. I think we're very welcoming to people from all over the world. What is the big advantage to these people and indeed the people in Perth Kinross by joining the scheme and effectively adding a label to something I think we do very well already?
The advantage is that it allows us to access much more support and assistance for our staff in terms of training and awareness and integration, and also provide a platform to access further grant funding for some of our voluntary partners that support us as part of that integration. So it opens up various networks for us, but ultimately it gives us the recognition, along with other 5 local authorities in Scotland, that we are a UK City of Sanctuary.
Thank you. Deputy Provost next, please.
Thank you very much. And can I first say, as I welcome this report wholeheartedly. Whilst the intent here is that Perth and Kinross join the City of Sanctuary UK organisation, what I didn't see in the paper and wonder about, is there any formal provision within the City of Sanctuary UK provisions for voluntary organisations within Perth and Kinross to, if you like, become associate members alongside the council's membership? Is there any way that other organisations can come in, if you like, formally on the back of Perth and Kinross as a council belonging? Thanks.
It's my understanding they can, but as part of the integration forum that we've got with our voluntary sector, they've come as part of the collective with us as a local authority, and you'll see that from the action plan. But if those individual organisations wanted to join, they could join along with us as the council, but we've come to agreement that we will join as a collective rather than just the local authority and the voluntary organisations, and that can be seen from our action plan.
Thank you very much. Bailey Ahern.
Thank you. Mine's a 2-part question. It says there that we're committing to a resettlement of at least 20. It doesn't give a maximum. And also, do we as a council have any council funding associated with this? Because I know most of the funding comes from the UK resettlement scheme, but is there any funding that we have to provide from council funds?
The number 20 is a modest commitment. It's not a target, which takes account of pre-existing pressures on housing and other services. The people who will settle are typically family groups, which vary in size, so it would not be practical to put a set number on that. And it's not envisaged that we would exceed the 20, but if we were at the point in the year that we've already welcomed 17 people and we were asked to take another cohort of families in terms of taking us over 21, that's why we went with that minimum 20. In terms of funding, we get there's significant funding through the UK government as outlined in the report, which means that we don't have to rely on other services. We actually fund those services to support us as part of that integration. So that would be with education, it would be with social work, it would be with housing. So there's no additional pressures on council services as such. And we also fund posts through that funding as well.
Thank you. Councillor Braun.
Sorry, thanks, Provost. Sorry, it takes the time to unmute. First of all, Elaine, many congratulations on your appointment. Well deserved, absolutely well deserved, I'm sure. My question really is in Appendix 2, regarding health and wellbeing. Now, we talk about various points here, health checks, GP registration, such and such, and the lead agency is Health and Social Care Partnership. Now, if I can just change hats for a minute, when we're sitting on planning, and my colleagues who sit on planning will know that on many of the big applications that come in, one of the questions that comes up regularly is about health and healthcare infrastructure. And we're told, quite rightly I'm sure, that it's not a matter of planning, it's a matter of a health and social care partnership. So there seems to be a lot of weight being put on the health and social care partnership's shoulders. And my concern is, are we sure we're not committing ourselves to doing something which in time we may not be able to live up to? We all know the GPs are struggling to get the numbers in. There are some surgeries now closing their doors to any new registrations. Those that are seeing people, of course, you can have up to 3 weeks waiting list. My concern, perhaps a little bit of concern, is are we committing ourselves to something which we may not necessarily now, but sometime in the future, not be able to live up to?
That has been a concern throughout the whole integration, the resettlement scheme, but health get additional monies over and above the tariff funding in here, so that's very separate, and that's not why it's not referenced in there. Health and social care is about the social work support. The health is additional funding that they get over and above the tariff funding that we get, and we've worked quite closely with local GPs regarding that, and it's been very successful, particularly with 2 practices within Perth City, and that's something we'll keep an eye on, and we've supported health with that. But we've discussed it and collaborated with health regarding our approach today in terms of the commitment, and they've got concerns, but in terms of the funding coming through, took away or mitigated some of those concerns that they did have.
Jackie Pepper's going to provide additional information.
Oh, right.
Thanks. I think Elaine has answered that question very eloquently. It was just to give confirmation of that, Elaine, that there is funding to support health assessments and health support. And one of the key issues that's come up for us previously is when we had quite a significant number of asylum seekers suddenly appear in a single location. So this will be quite different, but I think Elaine has given reassurance around that, and I'm happy to confirm.
Thank you very much. Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Provost, and also welcome to your new post. I hope you find it satisfying and enjoyable. My question actually is similar to Councillor Braun's question. Can you assure me that this won't put any additional pressure on social housing in our area? In places like Kinross, I'm often approached by young people who say they're overcrowded, and yet I'm told that there's absolutely no 2 or 3 bedroom properties available for them to get. Will this actually increase the amount of social housing that is available and won't actually put any pressure on the existing waiting lists? The reason I ask that question is one of the clear evidences from, and I hate to use this, is it not a swear word, but it's almost a swear word, Brexit, was that many people voted for Brexit thinking that people were coming from Eastern Europe and taking all their housing and all their health facilities, and that was, I think, it's been evidenced that was one of the major reasons that a lot of people voted for it. So can you just say a little bit about how the resources will actually help by joining this, how we'll actually get extra resources to provide more social housing and not put any pressure on our current social housing position?
Sorry, clarify, we're not using social housing in the report. I've made it quite clear we use the private rented sector housing market, and that's what we've done previously based on our previous experience. So your concerns regarding your local constituents not being able to meet their housing needs, that's had no impact. We've been part of a resettlement programme for some considerable time, and we've worked that really, really well. And that's where we've come up with the commitment in terms of that number 20. So in terms of giving reassurance, we monitor, we've got a multi-service group that meets monthly, and that's got representation from all the services that integration impacts on to look at the impacts on services, and we monitor that closely, and we look at where we can divert upskill or downskill depending on what's required in terms of the resources. So to give you the reassurance, it's not social housing that we'll be using. We work closely with our private rented sector partners and landlords to look at suitable housing, and also when we are asked to accommodate a person who's looking for resettlement, that's the first thing we do is to see where we've got accommodation. We link in with education in terms of pressures there. So there is a wee bit of negotiation that goes on when we're asked to resettle people. If we can't do it, we'll say, I'm sorry, we can't accommodate based on that side. So there is negotiation in there to take away any of the pressures that might impact on other services.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, can I just say, I found that response very helpful, and I think it's very important that people realise what's actually happening.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Forbes and then Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Provost. Just following on, actually, interestingly, from the last question, I did read that the property is going to be sourced from the private rented sector, but given that I think there was 19, on average 19 people go after every private rented accommodation currently in Scotland, and I think private rents have gone up by 14.3% in the last year. Have you done much work with the private rented sector to make sure that those properties are available? And how can you be sure that the council, on behalf of whoever's coming to get sanctuary here, would get ahead of the queue, basically, for some of those in-demand houses?
We've got a successful private sector team. We've got our private sector leasing scheme. So we use both of those options to allow us to link in with landlords. And we've got a good relationships with quite a lot of landlords. And some of the properties that we've got is some people are not interested in terms of location or size. So in terms of chasing the offer, we're working with landlords. We've got properties. We had properties identified for some people coming from Afghanistan, but they didn't want to come initially. So we have got properties, and it's just a relationship that we've developed and formed with our private sector landlords through our really successful PSL scheme, and then the incentives and the support and guidance we can give landlords as well. And also the funding that we get helps with accommodation costs in terms of setup costs. So that is another incentive going forward.
Thank you. Councillor James with the final question.
Oh, lucky me. Thank you very much, Provost. Elaine, like everybody else, well done on the promotion, if you like, or taking charge. Good luck. My question is reasonably simple. We've been asked to become a city of sanctuary. Have any other local authorities already become cities of sanctuary or areas of sanctuary? And if so, have they been successful or unsuccessful, please? Thank you.
Yep, there's 5 other local authorities in Scotland, and in the report it's under 4.5 in terms of they're already got City of Sanctuary status. And as part of coming here today, David McPhee and I spoke to these individual local authorities to find out what the benefits were, and that's why we're here today, to seek your approval to become a member.
Thank you very much, Elaine, and I've now come to the Leader of the Council to move the report.
I'll not be quite so brief because I'm going to have to repeat that part. I'd like to thank Elaine for introducing the paper. even although she had to reiterate many of the parts that are in the paper. Questions maybe elected members could save time in future if they could remember the paper, or what we talked about last week at the budget about private lets and the work we're doing and the investment we put into another private lets officer, which answered another question. But anyway, hey ho. Councillors, Perth and Kinross Council has an aspiration that the area will be a place where people can live their lives well, free from poverty and inequalities. Communities and even individual families have opened their doors to often a warm Scottish welcome to people seeking sanctuary from places of conflict, including Syria, Afghanistan and Ukraine. The Council has a strong track record of leading a multi-agency partnership approach to ensure that people seeking sanctuary feel safe, supported and can successfully integrate into communities. City of Sanctuary status will provide recognition for the work of these communities, the Council and our partners, and will send a clear message to people seeking sanctuary that Perth and Kinross is a place where they will be welcome. To further reinforce this, the paper recommends that the Council makes a commitment to resettle around 20 people each year through formal resettlement schemes. This relatively modest number has been carefully considered and takes account of pre-existing pressures on housing supply and other resources. This also responds to urgent requests from the UK and Scottish governments to provide support for the resettlement of those who have the indefinite right to stay, to remain. The funding associated with resettlement schemes means that there will be no burden on council resources associated with this commitment, and care will be taken to ensure that there is no impact for local people waiting on social housing. I'd just like to move the report. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Peter Barrett, second.
Thank you, Provost, and can I add my congratulations to Elaine Ritchie on her appointment as Strategic Lead for Housing and Communities. I think it's an excellent appointment, and I want to commend Elaine on the comprehensive but brief introduction to this report, something I think people could learn a lot from, and also the diplomatic way in which she answered some of the questions. I do remember having to speak to her once after she reminded or offered the view that the leader of the council had answered his own question in asking it, and saying that that was maybe not the most tactful intervention she'd ever made in this chamber. However, I've always admired Elaine's ability to speak truth to power, and long may that continue. So, Provost, at our full council meeting last August, I spoke about Perth's proud history of providing sanctuary to people fleeing from war and persecution and providing asylum, which dates back over a century to when the then Lord Provost of Perth and other civic leaders established a Belgian Refugees Committee to provide shelter, accommodation, support and work to Belgian refugees from Antwerp and Mechelen. Today's motion follows in that historic and honourable tradition of local compassion, leadership and humanitarian action. Humanitarian action most recently demonstrated by our response to welcoming Syrian and Afghan refugees and Ukrainian displaced people into our communities, and amplified by the relief work led by Councillor Carr and other local churches and groups. Provost, I'm very pleased to second the leader of the council in formalising Perth's status as a city of sanctuary and making firm the commitments to supporting people coming to our shores in desperation. Just yesterday, I attended the awards ceremony along with the Chief Executive for the latest cohort of young asylum seekers in the UK who had completed a leadership course run by David McPhee and John Cassidy for some of the young men currently living in hotels in Perth whilst awaiting decisions on their applications for sanctuary in this country. It was the second such ceremony that I've had the privilege of attending where those young men spoke about their journeys to the UK, the horrors which occurred in their homelands which forced them to leave, fleeing from persecution by the Taliban in Afghanistan and from wars in Africa. The men spoke of the terrors they experienced during their journeys involving small boats, tragic loss of friends who were unable to swim when their boats sank, the exploitation by gangmasters, labouring for months to earn the price to pay the people traffickers for the next stage of their journey and to bribe corrupt military authorities. It was an eye-watering and shocking lesson about a world we are barely aware of, but can barely conceive, far less fully comprehend. And it is humbling when these young men share their appreciation of the work that is done in Perth to teach them English and the other supports provided by ESOL, and hear how simple things like the bikes and access to the swimming pool and gyms of Live Active Leisure mean to them. Becoming a city of sanctuary means that we are making a public commitment that Perth and Kinross Council supports the city of sanctuary vision, that the UK will be a welcoming place of safety for all and proud to offer sanctuary to people fleeing violence and persecution. We will recognise the contribution of people seeking sanctuary make to our community. We will ensure that sanctuary seekers are welcomed, included and supported within our city and wider local authority area. And as the leader of the council has stated, we are committing to resettle a minimum of 20 people each year through formal resettlement schemes. Members, I commend this paper to you and I hope that you will give it your unanimous support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carr first.
Thank you. Firstly, congratulations to Elaine on her appointment. I honestly can't think of anybody more qualified or deserving for the position. As someone with first-hand experience on a number of occasions of the level of support provided to so many displaced Ukrainians by an excellent support team, both dedicated and sympathetic to the needs of those that they help, it makes me proud to have so many committed individuals within PKC, and I welcome the opportunity for their efforts to be officially recognised by membership of the UK's City of Sanctuary scheme.
Thank you very much. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Provost. I'd like to start by acknowledging and recognising the past record of Perth and Kinross in welcoming people requiring sanctuary, whether it's from the Belgians, as commented on by Councillor Barrett in his speech there, through the many from the Polish community that we welcomed here in the aftermath of World War II, right up to the current times with the Syrians, Afghanis, Ukrainians and the unaccompanied children. And we have shown, I think, how welcoming P&K has been in the past and will be in the future. I think it's also, however, incumbent upon us to acknowledge and recognise the possible areas of contention in relation to the pressures on areas such as housing, access to medical facilities, education, etc. And these have been raised. And if you look at the action plan, just in the first half a dozen actions there, it talks about access to ESOL provision, but we removed the budget for that last week in the budget. It talks about access to libraries, but they're on the brink of closure there. It talks about nursery and school provision, and we know the pressures that there are there. And it talks about things like health checks. And we know that there are these issues facing our resident population. I support the motion before us today, but I do hope that we will closely monitor these developments through this scheme and that updates will be fed into Housing and Social Wellbeing Committee or Council going forward. And in that regard, I would like to see an elected member briefing session on the subject in future so that we can have a better understanding of the issues and the impact that it can have or that we need to monitor going forward. So at some point in the future, I would like to have a offline discussion just to look at the impacts and the issues of this, but I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Duff, and I'm quite happy that we can agree an elected member briefing on this matter. We'll take that as an action. Thank you. Councillor Rebeck next, please, and then Councillor Harvey.
Thanks, Provost. I support this proposal unreservedly. I think we do have a moral obligation to help what actually is a very small number of people who are coming from the worst parts of the world, war-torn and when they're really vulnerable, and the role of private rented housing is crucial, as Elaine has already said. I think I would like to humbly suggest, and I refer to my earlier comments, if we do have problem in our housing stock, and we do, it is a legacy of the desire for successive Westminster governments to privatise everything that moved, also included local authority housing. And that's where the problems come from. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Hart.
Thank you, Provost, and welcome to Elaine to Perth Kinross Council. I had the pleasure of meeting some of the asylum seekers when we played football against them in a very incredibly one-sided game with some of our colleagues, and Thomas is also laughing too, although him playing behind me asking me to cover is another whole other question. But very briefly, I'm just going to move on. I have family connections in Bute and Rothesay, where the Bute Syrians arrived about 5 or 6 years ago. There was 2 families who immediately integrated into opening businesses, bringing more people in and raising the profile of Bute and Rothesay a huge amount. Looking at the plans we've got for this, I'm hoping that we can also offer the people coming to Perth the same thing, and it becomes a badge of honour for Perth for these people to come. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Braun next, please.
Thanks, Provost. Yes, I'm happy to support the motion. I think I've listened to what Councillor Lang and Councillor Barrett said. I think it's there's a lot of truth in what they say. I have a question mark over whether there's a necessity for it. Actions speak louder than words, and the actions of this council shout very loudly on what we've done. And the paper clearly demonstrates that. The Syrian resettlement, Afghan resettlement, homes for Ukraine. We do very well with this. Elaine is obviously involved in much of this. And it doesn't stop there. We, as Councillor Duff has mentioned, this goes back decades for free Poles, free Czechs in the war, Jewish refugees coming over here, Jewish children particularly. We have a history in this country of doing this, and we do it quietly, and we just get on and do it. And that's what we've done here in the last few years since I've been elected. And I think we should be very proud of that, and we should be very proud of the officers who've worked on this to get it right. As I say, I'm happy to support the motion. I just wonder whether we just need to put a sign up and say this is what we're doing, and we should just say action is what we do. This is what we get it, and we get it right. But happy to support it. Thanks, Provost.
Thank you very much, Councillor Braun. Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Provost. I don't know what pitch I wanted to take with this one, but I'm actually quite appalled by some of the questions. We're talking about up to 20 people coming to the whole of Perth and Kinross, and there's going to be a stress on our services. I don't think so. Are we going to adopt a Chinese policy of actually people can't have children because there's going to be a stress on our systems? But anyway, I'll leave it at that. If your morals include humanitarian values and others come to you seeking sanctuary, it should not be difficult to act in a humane way. This paper describes acting in that humane way, so I support it wholly. And to finish off on a positive note, Elaine, I've had the pleasure of working with you as convener so far, and you are the best person for the housing job. And you lead your team, who are excellent also, in a very constructive and very positive way. So I will continue to look forward to working with you, and I'm sure conveners who follow me in housing will also continue to enjoy working with you. Thank you. Thank you, Provost.
Right, thank you very much. Leader of the Council, do you wish to say anything summing up?
I would just like to say...
Sorry, Councillor McCall.
How could you forget about me?
I do apologise. I do apologise. I'm running off a few lists here. Councillor McCall, how could I forget you?
Thank you very much, Provost, and it would be remiss of me not to congratulate Elaine on her well-deserved appointment. And like Councillor McEwen, I'll look forward to continuing working with you. I just want to make a couple of comments on this paper and perhaps reflect a little bit on some of the comments that have been made elsewhere in this chamber this afternoon. I do understand that we have challenges that we have to face, but they're minuscule in comparison to the challenges faced by those who are seeking sanctuary here. And so it's not a good enough reason to do nothing. So I 100% fully support this paper, and I think it's our job as elected members right across this chamber to recognise the challenges that those seeking our help face and to do what we can to try and support them without necessarily to the disadvantage of anybody else. It's more of an equalities thing. And in a similar vein, you know, while I acknowledge wholeheartedly as well that we do a very good job and have a long history of welcoming people to our area, it's not a good enough reason to stay isolationist. You know, as Elaine pointed out quite rightly, being a member of this network will open up opportunities to funding, to shared learning from other organisations or other councils. And so I'm failing to understand why there were some of these sort of negative comments coming along. Having said all of that, I am very supportive of the paper, of the proposal, and I wholeheartedly support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor McCall. I apologise. Councillor Lane.
Yeah, I'd like to thank that we can support this across the chamber. I'm disappointed with some of the questions when Councillor Braun's their comments about why we would join. It's not just about shouting loudly, it's about helping with training and funding, etc. as well to enable our resources to learn and have extra funding to look after the people that we should be looking after at come here. So I think that's one of the reasons we should do it. The main reason is because we should be humanitarian. We should be looking forward to people we can help. I cannot think of any reason why we can't do everything we can to help not just our own residents, which we try and do on a daily basis, but also to welcome in a few other people that we have the capacity to help. And to question that, I don't think is conscionable. So, but thanks for having the across the chamber support.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leader. Members, can we all agree the report? Thank you very much. Members, we now move on to item 10, updates to the scheme of administration, and Scott Hendry, Democratic Services Manager, is going to introduce the report.
Thanks, Provost. I'll be as brief as possible. Members will recall that at the Finance and Resources Committee in June last year, the revised executive and leadership structure was agreed as part of the leadership review being carried out by the Chief Executive. The report presents changes to the officer delegation in Appendix 1 in terms of the scheme of administration, and this reflects the delegations that are now in place for the new strategic leads, and also sets out the role of directors within the context of the scheme. Within that area, the role of Director of Integrated Health and Social Care is pending the restructure of the partnership. There are no material changes to the contents of the scheme in terms of officer delegations. The only proposed changes to the remits of the committees are set out in Appendix 2, whereby the administration have brought forward revised remits for the Environment, Infrastructure and Economic Development Committee, now to be known as the Economy and Infrastructure Committee, and also the Climate Change and Sustainability Committee. Finally, I'll just point out in sections 49 of the report, it refers to the chef officer rather than chief officer. I can confirm that this is a typo, and there are no plans, I believe, for Jackie Pepper to move into a catering role within the council. Happy to take any question.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hendry. I have questions from Councillor Collins Stewart. Councillor Collins Stewart.
Thanks, Provost. Sorry, I'm working on the wrong screen here. Two questions on separate sections. Thankfully, Mr. Hendry had picked up the chef officer point. In 37.11, the chief executive or any director may, in accordance with council's recruitment policies and procedures, appoint strategic leads or equivalent. I think it was my understanding that there was elected member involvement in the appointment of strategic leads. Is that not the case?
Chief Executive, can you answer that?
Happy to take it. Certainly my understanding as the head of paid service, it's my responsibility to appoint to my team, and that, as I understand, has always been the case. In the recent appointments, the council leader has been invited to sit in part of the panel, and I think previously other conveners have been invited to sit in part of the panels, but ultimately for those appointments it has been an officer appointment.
Thank you.
Okay, I mean, I think I'm keen that at that strategic level, there would be officer involvement. So perhaps we can have a further discussion offline about that. The next one is about the chief officer, 49.4. I wonder if we could look at the wording here, because it says that the Director of Integrated Health and Social Care / Chief Officer is to be designated as the Chief Officer of Perth and Kinross Integration Joint Board. The appointment of the Chief Officer is a responsibility of the board, so I'm not sure if the wording there is quite right. Once the appointment is made, the Chief Officer then becomes a Director of NHS Teesside and of the Council, but this designation word, I'm wondering if that's quite the right thing.
Provost, I'm happy to have a look again at the wording with the monitoring officer just to reflect the situation.
Thanks very much.
Just to add to that, having spoken to Lisa Simpson prior to her going on annual leave about that specific one, she was trying to get a balance around the chief officer's role in relation to appointment by the IJB, but discharging functions as a council officer. So there is a balancing out. So I think she was herself suggesting that maybe the wording wasn't entirely perfect just yet. So we'll take that up afterwards. Councillor Liz Barrett.
Thank you, Provost. I'm just a bit confused about page 30, Appendix 2, page 33, where it indicates I've got two highlighted sections that say to move to Housing and Social Wellbeing Committee. Does that mean they're being moved there now, or yes? Right, thank you.
Yeah, just to clarify that I was looking at the remit of these two committees, it was felt that the two different sections that we've highlighted should actually move to the Housing and Social Wellbeing Committee.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions. There are no other questions. Councillor Lang to move the report.
Happy to move the report.
Thank you. Councillor Drysdale second.
Equally happy to second.
Wonderful. Members, are there any comments on the report? If there are no comments, can we agree the report? Thank you very much. Right, members, item 11. Elected members' briefing notes. Are members happy to note the briefing notes that have been issued to elected members since the council meeting on the 22nd of January 2024 as set out on the agenda? Thank you very much. Members, that concludes the public business for today. However, there is a few valedictories for some of our departing senior officers, and I'd like to invite a few councillors to come and join me for the first one. Deputy Provost, Councillor Peter Barrett, Councillor Angus Forbes and Bailey Bailey, if you could join me up at the podium over here, please. And if we could also invite Barbara Renton, please, to come and join us over here. Your first time. Thank you very much, elected members, for staying with us, and also welcome to those who've joined us in the public gallery as well, family and friends and fellow officers. Today, I would like to pay tribute to 4 of our senior officers who are leaving Perth and Kinross Council after a cumulative total of 151 years of public service, or to use Councillor Allen's equivalent, that's 5 provosts' lives, because that is now a measure of time as of this council meeting. The impact of their tireless dedication is immeasurable. They've exemplified the true spirit of public service and spent many, many hours addressing often very complex situations, which we can all appreciate. Barbara has been picked on to go first, however, and I think that's very fitting. So Barbara has embodied many of the values of the council, and very much Barbara will throw her hand at anything, I think, is probably, and quite happily actually. She'll happily take on anything you give her. There is incredible amount of compassion towards those in her team, and they have huge respect for her. And I know that from speaking to many of them over the past few weeks, where they are going to miss you significantly, and I know you're going to miss them as well. Barbara has been very tolerant towards councillors over her time, and as we look to make efficiencies and the time that council meetings take, that will include councillor question length, and Barbara has shown great tolerance to long questions and hopefully provided mostly succinct answers over the years, and that will be missed. Barbara started her public service career as a project administrator with Slessor Youth Project in Dundee in 1983, moving across to Mid Craigie Area Community Association in 1986. In 1989, she joined Tayside Regional Council, back when we had regions, as a project administrator in education. She then joined Perth Kinross Council at its formation in 1996 as service manager within Education and Children's Services, and has held a variety of posts throughout that time in the council, including Improvement and Innovation Manager and Head of Performance and Resources within the Environment Service. And I think you're already getting the feel that actually, as you can see, Barbara has worked in just about every aspect of council life during her time in public service. She moved on to be Deputy Director in 2012, and then Executive Director of the Environment Service in 2018. And it's also worth noting that, as well as that, she has acted as Interim Chief Executive on more than one occasion during her time. And whilst never wanting the top job herself, was prepared to step forward and take on that aspect of service when required. Barbara's leadership throughout her various positions within the council has been quite inspirational at various points, including as Gold Commander through the COVID pandemic, and any of us who were involved in that know the huge amount of hours that put on everyone, but particularly those in senior leadership positions. And Barbara, as you will be aware, always answers her phone regardless of time or day of the week. And she has coordinated a number of major events, not least the passing of the late Queen last year, as well as the Grand Fondo, major events such as Solheim Cup and the Ryder Cup, and has spent, I believe, quite a few occasions at Tea in the Park as well. So I'm sure there are many stories. However, apparently her most legendary relationship with celebrities is with Basil Brush. And I will have to find out what the story is behind that, because I'm not aware of it. I'm told by her team that one of the ways Barbara gets things done, and Barbara does have a reputation for getting things done, as we all know, is that she has a thing where she issues what are called BBS notes, which are because Barbara says. And if you get a BBS, then you have to get on with it, because otherwise Barbara will be breathing down your neck. So that is one of the reasons that her department runs so smoothly. She, more than any of those leaving us at this point in time, understands the challenges of local government, having served through, as we've outlined, a number of different aspects of our work, but has always been about delivery of services, and that is very much something we can recognise, those of us that have worked alongside Barbara. Barbara has always led with professionalism and good humour, even when we put some pressure and challenge on her, as we occasionally do. And she's even tried breaking in our new chief executive, although not convinced that's been a full success. I'm going to invite a few of my fellow elected members just to say a short couple of words on behalf of their groups, starting with the Deputy Provost.
Thank you very much, Provost. I feel there could be a bit of repetition this afternoon, so I'll seek not to repeat, but to introduce one or two points of levity, because I think they're always appropriate on this occasion. Barbara served, I think it's 35 years. I feel very honoured to be here speaking, since I have only been a councillor for 9 years, and that in the new Parliament is about a third of a provost, I think. But I have to relate, I think there are only 8 members here who remember the atrium days. But I think I first entered Barbara's conscience in the atrium when there was one of these odd doors where one is wide and one is very narrow. And I opened the narrow one, and it was incredibly narrow. It's only about 9 inches. Why it was there at all, I don't know. But I thought, oh, this is a challenge. I'll squeeze through it. And then having got through, I was conscious of Barbara looking at me, this new councillor who'd arrived at the by-election 2 months ago, with a sort of, what is this muppet up to face? Which, so that's, I think, how my relationship with Barbara got off to a start. But moving on to more serious things, Barbara has always been, I believe, hugely dedicated to her roles, and we must be very thankful to her. I've more than a few days when I've had emails from Barbara before 7 in the morning and after 10 in the evening, and I know you can time when to send things, but I believe these were genuinely sent at those times. Barbara, to me, has patience and courtesy in absolute abundance. I can't think of anyone else who, the crew we have here, I don't think I've ever seen you lose your temper in public or get upset with anything. And I think that's an awesome achievement. I really do. Beyond that, you have obviously all through your career had a professional concern for and kindness for people, but I know absolutely that kindness and concern has been extended to all of the staff who've worked for you and all councillors as well. Beyond that, you have a steeliness which I think you've always needed or have often needed. I certainly saw that steeliness deployed during some of the discussions with those organising the Cycling World Championships, just deployed to good effect. But beyond everything, I think you have to bring a sense of fun to things when you can, and Barbara has always brought a sense of fun to things whenever she can. I'm one of those who's interested in election statistics. I can't remember which of the many counts or events it's been at, but there I was late at night waiting for some electoral statistic to come through from, I think, Scott Walker and the team were working on it. And there were more than a few minutes to sort of waste. And so Barbara and I spent that time discussing other more interesting and perhaps competitive forms of elections. And we came up with sort of competitive hobby horse jousting with mops, I think, as a way of deciding between people. But that, yeah, and she also has a sixth sense. Where it comes from, I don't know. I think she's occasionally called it witchcraft. I don't think a sixth sense. There was one meeting in her office when I was, without doubt, being greedy with the biscuits, but they were behind her, and I was very hungry, I admit, taking the biscuits. And all of a sudden, without looking round, the hand came round and the tub of biscuits was removed from my grasp. I have no idea, because I was doing it very quietly. She doesn't have eyes in the back of her head, but she must have known something. But that's enough from me. Thank you very much indeed, Barbara, for all of the huge contribution you have made in local government from your most junior days to your most senior recent days. Thank you very much indeed, and we wish you well for a very happy retirement, doing things you want to do. Thank you very much.
Well, all I can say is if Andrew was willing to steal biscuits from Barbara's office, clearly he was in the army and I wasn't, because he's a much braver man than me, because I only took what I was given. I never, ever went for more, and certainly not behind Barbara's back. But you're leaving. We can say anything we like about you now. Yeah, I will, I promise. So, Barbara, thank you. You gave me a huge amount of support when I was not only a brand new councillor, but a brand new convener. And I don't think I would have survived the 5 or so years without you being there. And we know you worked and still work incredibly hard. And there's certainly many nights, particularly the night before committee, I'd be on the phone to you at 8 o'clock. I remember once you said, well, I'm just having my tea, but hang on, I'll stick it in the oven and then I'll take your call, which I thought was going above and beyond. And I did feel slightly bad about phoning you then. Not that bad, but slightly bad. But it wasn't all bad news. You know, we went to Edinburgh and we secured a huge amount of funding for the Dunkeld Road corridor, which was a good achievement that we all worked together on. I do remember, and I'm going to apologise, colleagues, for the word I'm about to use, but I do remember that I spotted that the word tits had appeared in a committee paper. And when I raised this with Barbara, she did suggest maybe we should leave it there just to see if anybody actually reads them. But on balance, we decided we'd better take it out. But thanks, Barbara, for all the work that you've done for me as a convener, for all of us as elected members, but for the people of Perth and Kinross over the years. There's a huge amount of corporate knowledge and experience leaving this council all at the same time, and that's a big worry, I think, for those of us who are left behind. But I assure you'll have a fantastic time looking after yourself, your husband and your family. And being your local representative, if you've got any complaints about dog poo, hedges or potholes, then Councillor Bailey will be happy to take them from you.
I think, Barbara, this is going to be worse than 5 editions of This Is Your Life, but I'm trying to keep it. Barbara, it's not easy to sum up 21 years of working with you, but I think it is fair to say that you've transformed the organisation and been instrumental in making Perth and Kinross a fairer and more diverse place to work. I think that you've been a role model for women in the organisation to aspire to, stepping in to lead Perth and Kinross Council, as we've heard on 2 occasions when we needed you most. Barbara has broken the mould of the organisation and not just transformed its face. And particularly when you think back 20 years ago to when the male-dominated Environment Service reeked in equal parts of diesel and testosterone, I think the communities service is thankfully unrecognisable from those dark days, and that is entirely due to Barbara's leadership. Like Angus, I had the pleasure of working most closely with Barbara for 2.5 years when she was Director of Communities and I was Housing and Communities Convener. And I've always said that the really good directors and leaders within Perth and Kinross Council have spent time in housing. It's where so many of our best officers have developed their values and commitment to public service and drive, and where others like Barbara, already possessing strong moral compass, versatility and a proven record of good decision making in challenging situations, have found their métier, and Barbara has demonstrated all of that in spades. I want to commend Barbara on her unshakable commitment to Perth and Kinross Council. Barbara is no stranger to working through the pain barrier and completely ignored my advice to have her hip operation and rehab while still with us so that she could enjoy her retirement when fully recovered. So maybe just 9 out of 10 for following political direction. However, I'm not sure that the other Councillor Barrett wouldn't give her the extra point given your leadership within climate change and sustainability. Barbara, I want to wish you and John all the very best in retirement and for the future. We will miss you, and as someone often says, you know, sort of.
So I'm terrible at these things. So in a search for material, I looked through and I found for each of the officers the first email exchange I'd had with each of them to see how the relationship started and see where it's now reached. And you won't remember this first email by any chance. So as many of you will know, it's an open secret. I was very pleasantly surprised to be elected. I didn't really know my way around a council or how things were done. One of the first things that landed on my desk was this kind of you might call it Facebook brouhaha about the church bells in Errol. The Facebook group was alive with this accusation that the council were about to ask that the church bells be turned off. People were taking opposite sides. There was going to be a protest. So I dropped an email to Barbara, dear Mrs. Renton. I was very formal when I started. There is a concern amongst the residents of Errol that PKC Noise Control intends to get the church bells in Errol turned off. Can I get a statement, please, on the matter, which I can use to address the questions I'm getting from residents? Kind regards, Alistair. Suffice to say, even though this was pretty early on a Tuesday morning, I think the 19th of July 2017, Barbara, you came back to me with chapter and verse about the detail of how the process works, how noise complaints are handled, and reassured me that there would be a due process to be followed before the council would consider issuing a statement to anyone asking them to turn off bells. And that avoided me from ending up in any difficult situation with the community or indeed with the Scottish Sun. So I will, with that, thank you for all your public service you've done through the years and wish you all the best for whatever comes next. Thank you.
At this point, I'd like to invite the Leader of the Council to present Barbara with some flowers, but also because there's probably quite a lot of your team. As Barbara transitions into her well-earned retirement, and we've had a few chats about it, and we've got a few plans, but taking it nice and easy being one of them. I think we are aware you're going to spend a lot more time with your husband John and son Jack and daughter Rachel, and I believe there are puppies and dogs to look after as well. So we would like to all express our thanks for all of your hard work over the years. And we know that, and you hopefully will know this too, that your work will outlast you in this council, and the reshaping of services that you have undertaken over that time, as was described by Councillor Barrett, actually will continue to outlast your time with us. We really hope that your retirement is a very happy one, and that you do finally get that hip operation. And I just expect you to do a little rain dance on your way out the council door, safe in the knowledge that no one is going to phone you up and ask you to perform an act of God by stopping the rain or stopping the snow. But we genuinely wish you a very happy retirement, and I'd like to invite you to say a few words if you wish.
For once. Thank you all for those really kind words, but who the hell are you speaking about? Someone clearly has been masquerading for me for some significant period of time. It is absolutely impossible to even begin to summarise my many years of working in the council, so you'll be delighted to know I'm not going to. However, since starting with Tayside in 1993 and being involved with Perth and Kinross since the shadow year in 1995, many things have changed, but some things have remained the same. Changes: the ban on smoking in public places, including offices. Could you believe that? That we allowed that. The advances in information technology, the internet, more women in senior management positions, the introduction of multi-member wards. What was that all about, really? And the impacts of a worldwide pandemic. I was also lucky enough in that time to become a mum twice. And to be honest, it probably would have made more sense to call the kids Perth and Kinross and make them think that mum was speaking about them all the time. In terms of similarities, Greg Boland still has the same approach to tanning that he did when I first met him in 1993. Career opportunities to continue to exist for those who wish to take them up, and the size and makeup of the council area continue to present both challenges and opportunities. And elected members, well, you're still elected members. I've experienced good days, bad days, fun days, days which felt absolutely disastrous, sad days, and some absolutely brilliant days. I've also experienced with both officers and elected members good relationships, bad ones, fun ones, disastrous ones, sad ones, and some absolutely brilliant ones as well. And while you decide which ones that you are, all of those days and relationships will remain with me forever, and I will be proud of almost all of them. People often ask me why I've stayed so long with the council, and the simplest answer is that for me, nothing anywhere else would or could beat this place, and more importantly, the people. I have an undying belief in the importance of public service, defined by the desire to improve both people's lives and the services we provide to them. Throughout my time, in whatever job I have been privileged to undertake, I have endeavoured to keep that focus on public service for myself, while encouraging, motivating, leading and challenging everyone I have worked with, including you all as elected members, to do the same. And I'd like to think that most of the time I've been successful, but hey, I am only human. For me, this has always been a team effort, and I will be eternally grateful for the many teams I have had the pleasure to be part of. I believe in the Council's values of ambition, integrity and compassion. I also believe that to have ambition, we all need to demonstrate ambition, that to have integrity, we all need to act with integrity, and that to be compassionate, we all need to display compassion. And underpinning these is a strongly held view that our combined and collaborative strengths as members and officers should be what sets this council apart from all others. Throughout my long career, I have made many recommendations in many committee reports, at leaders' meetings, conveners' meetings, and in private. And so my final recommendation to you is that you, with officers, never lose sight of those values or the vital role we have to play together to do the very best for the people of Perth and Kinross. Thank you, and I wish you all the very best in the future.
If I can now pick on Karen Donaldson next, please. And if I could ask Councillor McCall, Councillor Peterborough, you can stay there, as can Bailey and Councillor John Duff to join me for this. You want to stand on this side? You're invisible. So next up on this show that we've got this afternoon, and when the Deputy Provost was speaking, I was reminded of Councillor Robertson's suggestion that we should introduce the rules of just a minute, and I was thinking that's a good idea. So I'll just use all this up and leave nothing for the rest of you to say. However, we've got an awful lot of experience leaving the chamber and leaving the council in the next few weeks. And Karen has been here with us incredibly since 1986, I believe, is what I've been told, which is an incredible period of service. And in fact, I was just doing the maths on that. I was trying to work out how much before I was born that was, but it was a good few years before I was born. So Karen has served an incredible amount of public service in that time, and has worked her way up through corporate services, starting off as a trainee personnel officer. And apparently she had a car registration that predicted PKC coming into being, because this was before PKC existed. This was Perth and Kinross District, I believe, at that point. But she had a PKC registration. However, she was quickly promoted, and I'm told it was promoted in 1987 as opposed to 78, which is what I was originally told, where you had somehow managed to go back in time. And when PKC came into being, she transferred over as a senior personnel officer, and continued successfully through her human resources career to become the corporate HR manager in 2013, and then became Deputy Director of Corporate and Democratic Services in 2019, which is where I came across Karen, and then latterly has held the post of the Council's Chief Operating Officer. And I was on that interview panel actually at the time, and it was absolutely clear of Karen's dedication to the council, her real strong values around public service, and actually an aspiration that everyone in the council should have the opportunities to thrive and learn, much as she had done during her career, and those are values that should follow us all through. Her time as a very dedicated public servant, and her unwavering commitment to make a positive impact will leave a mark on the organisation, and particularly in HR. And we've had some fairly radical things for public sector, I would say, in terms of HR policies. those are experienced through some of the reshaping we're talking about with some of Barbara's organisation, part of the organisation as well. And that's not an easy thing, actually. As an HR leader, that's quite a challenging thing, to have those relationships with unions that will allow you to get those changes, and they still don't exist in other councils. So that is something that not only was transformational at that point, but will outlast you as well. It's a significant amount of expertise in corporate services that are departing today, but particularly that HR leadership, which, as I say, is a significant challenge to be losing. So over my time knowing Karen, mostly as Chief Operating Officer, you're overseeing a lot of the COVID pandemic as well, and that was a very pressurised time, and you didn't lose your cool during that, and you kept the organisation running. And parts of the organisation that you were overseeing were, for example, issuing payments to businesses at 4 or 5 a.m. in the morning because we could not get the bandwidth at other times of the day to do that. And those are the sorts of initiatives that were necessary and that you championed. I'm going to hand over to a few of my fellow councillors again to provide some tributes on behalf of their political groups. So starting with Councillor McCall, please.
Thank you, Provost, and thank you, Karen. 1986, huh? I wasn't even living in this country then. I was still in Ireland, and the thought of public service for me anyway was a million miles away. So that's some record to stand by. I've only known Karen since I was elected in 2017, so that's the time span that I can comment on. But one of the first committees I wanted to be part of was the Employee Joint Consultative Committee and the Employee Health and Safety Committees, because of the trade union representatives, because I was quite interested in the rights of the working people and to make sure they're well served. So I was looking forward to some heated exchanges and exciting and thrilling debate within these committees. But sadly for me anyway, that wasn't the case. And it's when I first came across Karen and her team of HR staff. And my first impression was firstly that Karen was someone who led by example and who empowered her team to lead on and to take ownership in the various agenda items that came before the committees. But I think the other thing that was pleasing but unexpected was there was a very good relationship with the trade unions, and that industrial relations in the councils were therefore open and generally positive. So it kind of left me in a bit of a loose end, wondering what I was going to get my teeth stuck into. So I decided to merge the committees instead and make them just one. But even with that, Karen was very helpful, and her team were helpful in helping to achieve that. And I should also just say for everybody here, I think we kind of take it for granted that we have generally good working relationships or good industrial relations with our staff members and the staff groups and the trade unions, but that doesn't happen by accident. And I think as a testament to Karen's leadership of the HR team and the entire team that we do enjoy those good relationships, and it helps us as elected members certainly to be able to deliver on the services that we want to in a way that doesn't create any further blockages to everything. But that was a great thing. And I think when Karen, like the Provost, I sat in the appointments committee when Karen was appointed to CEO, and I think at the time she came across very well, and I was delighted when she was offered that post and accepted it. One of the things I probably should say, perhaps on a more personal level, is that outside of these committees that I sat on, that I worked with Karen on, she was always available to answer the daft councillor questions when I was first elected. So I won't tell you what they are because we're still broadcasting, I think, but I just want to thank you for your time and patience and accessibility for all of that. And I think the other thing I would be remiss if I didn't note was that, as many of you know, I had some knee surgery in recent years, and prior to that I was waiting patiently for it. But Karen volunteered, even when she was COO, to give me some very good advice in preparation for and recovery from these procedures. And if I didn't say so enough at the time, thank you very much. It was invaluable. And maybe it's something you can think about now you'll be retired, to be a coach or a recovery coach for anyone who's contemplating any of these types of surgeries. And I'd happily provide a recommendation for you to do so.
Barbara, I am available.
I was thinking about Barbara. In conclusion, anyway, Karen, it's been an absolute joy for me to have been working with you over the past 7 years, and I wish you and your family a long, healthy and very happy retirement.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you. Karen, sure the last couple of weeks actually has probably been a long series of goodbyes as you've reached the final meeting of this, final meeting of that and occasions. So we gather today, obviously, to wish you well for the future. And I'd like to just thank you for your services to the council over many years. I just hadn't realised that back in 1986, Perth and Kinross District Council's recruitment policy took people so young. But I'd like just to say on behalf of us all to thank you for everything you've done for the people of Perth and Kinross. I know Provost has obviously talked about all the experience in the number of provosts that adds up to, but I'm probably thinking that you'll be looking back over your time with us and counting the number of chief executives that you've seen off. And you can tell us the number in due course. But I know that, like Sheila, my knowledge of you only extends back a few years since I got elected 6 years ago. But I know that your dedication and commitment to your public service and to your work has been exemplary, and that you've been a great support to the Chief Executive and to the senior management team. And I was very delighted when you were appointed to the Chief Operating Officer post, and I welcomed that. I personally appreciated your advice and guidance and support to me, and particularly through the sort of group leader side of things. And as I say, the advice you gave me stood me in good stead, and I thank you very much for that. I know that, having spoken to you, that you're looking forward to your retiral and heading off into the sun for a well-earned rest and a break. So in addition to our kind of collective thanks for your service, can I, on behalf of us all, wish you and your family a long, happy and healthy retirement. Thank you.
You're into home straight now, Karen. So, I was very pleased to attend the retirement presentation for Carolyn Donaldson last Thursday. I think Stuart Mackenzie still wrongly believes that the huge turnout was for him, but we all know that he could really only have counted upon Stuart Donaldson and Councillor Liz Barrett, as they're both accountants. Karen, as she said, did speak about her career in numbers, including the number of chief executives, but also the number of elections that she's overseen in her time. Experiences that members across the chamber have shared with Karen, although from opposite sides of the counting table barriers. I'm just long in the tooth to have shared with Karen council elections with 42 separate boards and manual counts under the old single member first past the post system before we moved, as Barbara said, to 12 multi-member constituencies with single transferable votes and automatic counting. Karen has literally been there and got the lilac t-shirt. In fact, I thought that she was wearing it today, but she says it's hidden very deep at the bottom of one of her wardrobes. As an elected member, my path and Karen's didn't cross or overlap very often. I've tried to shy away from employee appeals, but I really valued Karen's calm counsel and professionalism and mastery of detail in my early stints on the Corporate Health and Safety Committee, and I think I share that with Sheila. I do also, like John, want to thank Karen for the support that she gave me for something that actually had nothing to do with the council, and Karen did that when she had no obligation to do so, which I think is a mark of her generosity and kindness. And that was when I was landed in a voluntary role with having to deal with managing underperformance, sickness absence and disciplinary processes for an employee. It was the sort of thing that caused me sleepless nights with anxiety and stress. I know Karen loves her jobs and I envy and admire her resilience, but I couldn't do it for all the tea in China, Karen. Karen, we wish you all the very best in retirement and hope that you follow your passions outside of Perth and Kinross Council to the full. I know that you said that foreign travel is one of them, so I hope that you make plans to explore the wonders of the world as your beloved Saintie's domestic travails suggest that the prospect of a run in Europe yielding many city breaks may be in the dim and distant future. You never know, there is always hope, and our hopes and thanks go with you, Karen.
Thank you. And to add to what previous people have said, I did the email trawl as well for you, Karen, and you come out glowingly, I'm pleased to say. So it was 2018 before Karen and I had need to meet or do any business together. It was when I was putting together the motion that many of you will remember about for the first time, paying the real living wage rate early, effective when it was announced rather than when we statutorily had to pay it. And looking through that email exchange and my notes from meetings that followed, Karen was kind enough to step me through the potential unintended consequence of my action, specifically the problem that although I was trying to do what I saw as a good thing, you can have unintended consequences from doing those things. And she was good enough to take the time and take me through those things. And that's something that I'll always appreciate. Thank you. And your explanation of what I now call the concertina effect, the fact that if you pay the folk at the bottom a little bit more, the people just above them start to become concerned that their grade no longer has a differential. And that was very good of you to explain that. It's something I've explained to others, even in my own movement since that. So thank you for that. And thank you, Karen, for your many years of service. Thank you.
And Karen has set her diary by expecting that annual email about putting forward a living wage motion. We now have some flowers from the leader of the council here for you, Karen. I know from speaking to Karen recently that she is planning on doing some travelling. She's got that already organised, and we were having a chat about our mutual love of the garden, and she's like me, a fair weather gardener. Neither of us are planning on going out in the torrential rain or snow, but she's very much looking forward to enjoying the garden and pursuing other interests now that she has the freedom of not having to answer councillor replies at 10 o'clock at night on a Friday. I hope that all of your upcoming journey through retirement with your husband Doug and your sons Andrew and Callum will be very enjoyable, and we thank you for your many years of public service, and we just invite you to say a few words yourself.
Well, thank you all for your very kind words. And I know many of you here today did hear my reflections of my local government career, which spans 5 decades back to 1986. So all that really remains for me to say today is that it has been an absolute privilege and a pleasure to serve the people of Perth and Kinross throughout my career with Perth and Kinross Council and the predecessor council. I'm going to take a slightly different tack now. As you would expect from me, I always like to break the mould. If you didn't already know, this is National Apprenticeship Week, and it is in fact the 17th week-long celebration of apprenticeships. So I wanted to take a few moments in this special week to celebrate all of the people throughout our workforce and beyond who started their careers as either a youth trainee, a skill seeker, a modern apprentice, or a graduate trainee, as I did. So this council has a long tradition of giving people of all ages and circumstances the opportunity of hands-on learning, gaining recognised qualifications, and earning while they learn. And it also gives huge and immense learning and development opportunities throughout people's careers. And when I say the council, I mean councillors who have invested money in apprenticeship and graduate programmes and who provide support during weeks such as this when selecting the Apprentice of the Year and the Apprentice Supervisor of the Year, which are our key events this week.
However, the true success of any programme such as that rests on those across our workforce who commit to mentor, to train, to support and fund jobs for those who join our training programmes. So in 1986, when I joined Perth Kinross District Council as a graduate trainee, I know firsthand the importance of having a manager and a mentor who believes in you, who encourages you to be the very best that you can be. And I think that we have that in huge spades throughout this organisation. So my experiences have ingrained in me the importance of promoting employability, ensuring that my teams offer high quality training programmes for young people with career paths leading to sustained employment, and to developing diverse training programmes across the workforce to generate that supply of talent, of future leaders, and helping to boost training and employment opportunities for local people with one of the largest employers in Perth and Kinross. And we heard some fantastic examples from Jackie and her teams today, talking about the opportunities that we have made available within the Health and Social Care Partnership and within Children's Services. There are hundreds of employees across this council workforce today who started out in similar training positions. And today I ask that in thanking me for my service, that we also celebrate the vital role that the council plays in supporting employability across Perth and Kinross. And while there's much more to do, I will be watching from the sidelines to see what happens in future. So thank you, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you again, Karen. And I was very grateful that she didn't single out the apprentice provost in her speech there. I've had a few gaffes today. I'd like to invite Stuart Mackenzie up next to join us on This Is Your Life. And I'd also like to invite Councillor Donaldson, probably no surprise to anyone, Councillor Liz Barrett, Councillor David Illingworth, and Bailey for this. So we welcome Stuart for this latest instalment, and I'm reflecting actually on the departure of a previous senior officer of the council, where some of Stuart's remarks about their appointment at that point were remarked upon, and it was the former chief executive, when Bernadette Malone, when she was departing, about his warm words to her when she was appointed as chief executive. And I can't remember the exact words, but I think it was pretty much like, "Oh dear, the rumour is true," that she had been appointed. And that is the sort of honesty that we have come to expect from Stuart Mackenzie in his role as head of finance. Stuart's career began in local government with the Teesside Regional Council as a trainee accountant, and again was one of those lucky people on one of those trainee programmes that Karen was talking about just a moment ago, back in 1990, so again before I was born at this point. Just to make you feel old there, Stuart, and worked his way up to senior accountant before transferring to the new Perth and Kinross Council in 1996 as team leader for financial policy and planning. And I see the titles have got as snappy as ever still. Stuart then held various positions within the council, mainly within finance, and came to be the head of performance and resources within the Environment Service for 5 years from 2012. So getting the gang back together here with Barbara over there. In 2017, Stuart was appointed as the head of finance and chief finance officer. And it's in this role that I came to come across Stuart as a new elected member. Stuart and I have had many discussions over the years about the prudency of the council's finance, long before Councillor Cuthbert came along to complain about the size of the capital programme or how unfunded it was. Stuart had me, and there was many a late night pre-budget as we stood next to the photocopiers discussing the sustainability of council finance. Stuart has always welcomed elected members with openness, honesty, and a considerable amount of patience, as I think we've all come to understand. And that is greatly appreciated, because sometimes we don't understand it the first time you explain it. Sometimes you use accountant's language and we just don't get that. Your knowledge of your subject area is second to none, and has been incredibly insightful to us over the years. And I am very grateful, and on behalf of Scott Walker, I'm going to help you out, Scott, here. I'm going to put all of the blame on all of the previous Scottish Labour and Independent budgets and allowing them to be competent were all down to Stuart Mackenzie. It had nothing to do with Scott Walker at all. It was all Stuart Mackenzie. He signed off on all of our crazy schemes. And said they were all fine. So thank you very much, Stuart, for helping us make them competent. I'm now going to invite some of our fellow elected members just to say a few words of reflection on their time. And I should just reiterate, as we've already outlined, it is just a minute rules here, Councillor Donaldson. So you have a minute. No deviation, repetition.
Can I just say, first of all, to Councillor Peter Barrett, accountant, moi. Next, you'll be calling me an actuary, and I think Stuart and Scott will get the allusion to that joke. Stuart, welcome back. After only 3 working days, you're here with us again. This indeed goes above and beyond. But I'm also really pleased today, for the first time, to meet your wife, Karen, and sitting in the back row there. And we've not met before, although I suspect Karen may have heard 1 or 2 things about my good self over recent years. We've thanked Stuart on 1 or 2 occasions already at Finance and Resources at the end of January. And I express my sincere thanks to him for his counsel, his advice, and the contribution he's made over the years since I was elected in 2017. And all the other members of the Finance and Resources Committee were in total, complete unanimity, and some of them going back well before 2017. Then last week, Karen Donaldson, in the presentation to members of staff and to councillors, paid fulsome recognition as to what he's achieved. That then followed by, I think, what can best be described as a highly distinctive and entertaining tribute by Lisa Simpson and Scott Walker. And they did so in a manner I can't even begin to emulate. And so today, at full council, before all councillors and the public, I think we want to recognise what Stuart has achieved. Provost McDade, you referred to Stuart starting off with Tayside Region. I think that's in 1990. And I know there, like several other finance colleagues, like Scott, he was his lead was Robert Black, who went on to become the renowned Auditor General for Scotland in the first one. And he trained them well, without any shadow of a doubt. And then after joining Perth Kinross in 1996, Stuart held, as you've mentioned, a number of roles in finance and the Environment Service, and indeed was previously head of finance when John Simon was away for a while. And then he became the permanent head of finance and Section 75 officer in 2017. That's a role he's filled with distinction over the last 6.5 years. Along
with all the other members of the finance team, he strived to ensure good stewardship and management of the council's finances. But let me conclude. I think one thing that has to be stressed is Stuart is from Perth, always has been, and I expect always will be. I really wish both Karen and himself a happy and long retirement, but I suspect, and Karen may not want to hear this, that after a break, I get the feeling he may yet take a role in local life in Perth and Kinross. So I think I really want to say not so much adieu, but more au revoir. But I'm sure our paths will cross again. Stuart, many, many thanks.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, Stuart. We've been asked to say just a few words, and I'm going to keep to that promise as I normally do. Without effective financial management at the council, none of the services that we are all so proud of can be possible. No potholes filled, no home care visits done, no council tenancies arranged, none of it. So on behalf of the Audit and Risk Committee, I'd like to thank Stuart for his many years of service and leadership, and for the benefits of his intelligence and sense of humour. Now, I know I'm only using a few of those words, but just because I'm using a few of those words doesn't mean my wishes for him aren't sincere. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the Lib Dem group, I'd like to add my thanks and our best wishes to Stuart. I haven't worked with Stuart for long, but long enough to know that we could have full confidence in the steady hand of our Section 95 officer to keep us legal in the face of massive challenges we've faced as a council, even since I arrived, working around the impacts of endless diktats from Holyrood, council tax freezes, ring fencing, COVID, and Liz Truss. Stuart the patient, when the councils insisted on ignoring his advice on the prudent approach, or when responding to Councillor Donaldson on yet another question about the P word. Stuart the magician, always seeming to be able to come up with a wizard wheeze to get us out of a hole. And Stuart of the dry sense of humour, who commented recently that he realised when I arrived in Audit and Risk and had actually read the annual accounts, although to be fair, he also suggested that I understood them, which was rather more flattering than accurate. He did say he thought it was going to be fun working together. And Stuart, it has been fun. Thank you for all you've done for Perth and Kinross, and very best wishes to you and to number one Karen over there for a long and happy and healthy retirement. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart, for all you've done through the years. We've had a lot of discussions, some of them challenging. I think I did the email trawl on you as well. And our first email exchange was actually something I sent to you on the 18th of May 2017, so just shortly after the election, with Councillors Forbes and former Councillor Pover in copy. Dear Stuart, as the three councillors for Ward 1 Castle Gowrie, we would like to speak to you or the appropriate person in the team to learn more about the arrangements for council-supported bus services in our ward. So you can see, obviously, Stuart was kind enough to direct me to the public transport unit. We had that discussion ultimately, but you can see how so much changes, but so little changes. The hot topics often stay the same. In my first term on the council, some of you will know I used to be in a group with a councillor called Councillor McDade. He was quite the disruptor, Councillor McDade was. And I think other people have spoken to the patience and the cool temper with which Stuart responds to emails. It was remarkable for me. I'd be able to be there and I'd see the email messages coming from Councillor McDade, wherever he might be today, and to Stuart in terms of, how can we make this fit? How can we make that work? No, we're rejecting that. We don't accept that pressure. And it's amazing, Stuart, that you were able to keep up with that and keep a cool temper and find ways of making things possible, because that's, I think, one of the key jobs of an officer, is to find ways for the political will to be able to be reached the chamber, to be debated. So thank you for the excellent job you do of that, and thank you for your service through the years. Thank you.
I think we've summed up Stuart there, level-headed, always keeping the heat despite what's been thrown at you by the government or by councillors. We have a little token. These are not for Stuart. These are for Karen, and for having to put up with all of the stuff that we send to Stuart, home with him probably many times. But Stuart, your real stewardship over the last few years as head of finance will be sorely missed. Although we are now in safe hands of your trainee protege, Mr. Walker over there. So when it all goes wrong, he will just put the blame onto you, as you showed him how to do all the tricks. And your service and dedication to the council is hugely appreciated, as was remarked on by Councillor Donaldson. You are a Perth lad, and have always been a Perth lad, and will continue to be so. And would like to invite you to say a few words yourself now, if you wish.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you, councillors, and thank you, Councillor Lane in particular, for the first flowers my wife's had in several years. So one last chance to live dangerously in front of a microphone in front of you all. Can I start by offering my congratulations to my colleague Elaine Mitchell. Elaine, I'm personally delighted for you. That's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. Well done. Be fantastic. Now, I'm not known for my brevity, but I'll aim to be brief. As you've heard, I've worked in local government for almost 34 years now, most of that with Perth and Kinross, and I am a Perth lad. It's been a particularly eventful past 7 years as head of finance. And for much of that time, I've had to tell you things that I know you don't want to hear, and I didn't want to have to say. And I appreciate you listening to that advice with good grace in difficult times. Again, I'm perhaps not best known for my optimism, but I remain optimistic for the future. Despite the challenges ahead, I know how talented and dedicated the team supporting this council are. And I'm delighted that my long-standing friend and colleague Scott Walker has taken over as Chief Financial Officer. And I'm particularly delighted that he is now in the position of answering Councillor Donaldson's questions. And I've encouraged Councillor Donaldson and yourselves to be robust in your questioning. And this next bit's really going to get me into trouble, but I'd like to obviously offer my thanks to my wife, Karen, who has shared, I'd say this journey, but every single moment of my career with me, and without whose support, I wouldn't have the life I have, let alone the career that I've had. Thank you. I am in so much trouble for that. I've been able to work in my hometown in an organisation that touches everyone's lives, with the most supportive, generous and brilliant bunch of people I could ever imagine working with. It doesn't get better than that. Thank you and all the best.
Thank you very much, Stuart, and we hope that you and Karen enjoy your long and well-deserved retirement. And you can read about your name in the papers when you're being blamed by Mr. Walker for all the financial problems. Thank you very much. I'd now like to invite our last, but certainly not least, departing senior officer Hazel Robertson to come and join us. I'd also like to invite up Councillor Michelle Frampton and Councillor Caroline Shires to join Councillor Liz Barrett for our final act of today's show. Just for the departing senior officers, this is just your announcement that in May 2027 there is local elections that you may be interested in looking for a new career in after your life as an officer. You can get the other side and feel what it's like to be giving your former colleagues a hard life. Hazel Robertson and I came across each other through what is now Learning and Families, but was when I joined the council, the Lifelong Learning Committee. And Hazel's time with the council has been filled with fairly challenging topics, actually, because you keep a very cool head, but actually, as we remarked on earlier on, the topics that you deal with are very, very difficult. And you're very, very passionate about them, not just here in the council, but actually out in wider Perth and Kinross and society. I have, in my role as provost, more recently shared more than a few stages with you around violence against women and those experiencing domestic abuse and the importance of trying to combat those issues. So your life apparently started with Tayside Regional Council, as so many of you seem to have started there. It's obviously where they take good officers and train them up and then pass them over. In 1986, so that was another 7 years before the provost was born, just to put that into context, as a social worker, but here in Perth and Kinross. And you were promoted to senior social worker in 1991. And then in 2001, you left us to go to that awful place, Dundee City Council. However, you didn't spend that much time with them. You then moved on to Angus Council in 2004 to join them as Principal Planning Officer for Joint Strategic Support, another snappy local authority title. It just rolls off the tongue. I'm sure you found it very easy for your 4 years there. And then in 2008, you were promoted to Service Manager for Children and Families. However, you can't stay away from us for that long, and you returned to Perth and Kinross in 2015 as Service Manager here for Education and Children's Services. And then in 2018, you rose to the lofty heights of Head of Service for Children, Young People and Families. And this role is a fairly all-encompassing role. I mean, it sounds, as I say, it sounds nice and shiny, but actually there's a lot of tough topics in there and no shortage of financial challenges as well, actually, as we were discussing earlier on. So in this role, you've spent a considerable amount, in all of your roles in fact, spent a considerable amount of time working with children and young people and their families, vulnerable adults, wide range of partners, which actually your role again touches on possibly the widest range of statutory partners and making sure that we get the right outcome for every individual. It is a role that requires significant compassion, coming back to Barbara's words of earlier on about what we need to show in terms of the council's corporate values, and you demonstrate those. And it's very much a compassion for everyone in the situation, which is quite important, because actually, yes, there might be a child at risk there, but actually there's also a family in crisis, and understanding that there's a whole to be treated. And some of that has been demonstrated through some of your reorganisation of your service as well. As I mentioned, you continue to do a lot of this outside of the council as well, because actually for you this is not just a job, this is very much something you believe passionately in, and your life has very much been dedicated to the service of others, but particularly those most vulnerable. And I think it's very important that we reflect on how challenging that is, both personally as well, actually, as professionally, because it drains a lot out of you when you do these things. So it's remarkable that you always manage to have a smile on your face every time you come to committee, and it's not because you're trying to get past challenging questioning by elected members. It is truly because you're enthusiastic about what you do. One of I was told a story recently that the impact is demonstrated quite well by a story I was told recently where one of our former care experienced young people came up to you after one of our corporate parenting boards, I believe, to express upon you how much of an impact you'd had on their life. And I think one of the things that you can reflect on is actually you won't know how much of an impact you've had on most people's lives because you don't get to necessarily hear all of those stories. But today it would be nice to just express to you that you have transformed the lives of hundreds and possibly thousands of people across Perth and Kinross for the better, and we are very grateful for that. You're leaving us now, but again, as I say, your reorganisation of your service will outlast you, and also your positive, enthusiastic mark on your team will outlast you as well as they carry on your values. And I'd like to welcome just some of my former, I'm getting ahead of myself, the election's not happened yet, some of my current elected members, soon to be your former council colleagues, and starting with Councillor Michelle Frampton, please.
Put my glasses on so I can see this time. I already gave this speech at the Children and Families Partnership the other day, so I'm just going to repeat what I said. Hazel, I want to thank you for your care, compassion and dedication to all of the children, young people and families that you've worked alongside with your team to enable safe, secure environments, whether that was within the family unit, kinship care, foster care or residential, for the best outcomes for all. Your dedication to the role has been clear for all of us to see, that you've always aimed to do your best for the children, young people and families of Perth and Kinross. I have appreciated every bit of guidance and advice you have given me throughout my time here, as I'm sure many other councillors will have. We will miss you. I wish you a happy retirement, that you will now have time to enjoy your family and hobbies and other interests, such as your rock choir. It can be hard leaving a role that you've done for many years, leaving your mantle down for someone else to carry on. I know that you'll feel reassured that Aaron will do his best in the role going forward. I wish you all the best for your future. So rock on, Hazel.
A lot easier when just use a bit of paper, isn't it? Thank you, Provost, and thank you, Michelle. Hazel, when I took over as convener of lifelong learning, Councillor Bob Band said to me that it was one of the best jobs that an elected member could ever have. I'm sure Councillor Ribbick will vouch for it. One of the main reasons for this is the people that you've got the opportunity to work with, and Hazel, you've been one of the best. Thomas, you have asked officers that question about that thing that brings you joy. And if you've ever seen Hazel on the stage singing with the rock choir, you'll know exactly what brings Hazel joy. I think I was a bit of a disappointment to ECS when I started because I had Councillor McCall who could sing beautifully, and then there was me who couldn't. So there we go. Like so many in this chamber, I've learned so much from you, Hazel, whether it's been in meetings of full council, at committee, the Children and Young People's Partnership, and especially at corporate parenting. Hazel has always ensured that councillors were aware of the legislative framework in which decisions are taken in a way we could understand, the impact of decisions and the longer term planning requirements. The REACH project was a huge redesign of services to keep young people with their families and in their communities, and a piece of work of national importance. Driving forward our support for care experienced young people and delivery of the promise in Perth and Kinross are just some of the pieces of work that I hope you will take pride in. We have seen so much positive work done under your leadership, Hazel, and for that we're grateful. Your legacy will be a positive one for so many of the most vulnerable in our communities. I think, again, another thing which Councillor Rebick will vouch is you start off in ECS or education and you've got maybe your own children, and very quickly you feel like you've got thousands of them, because that's the way the service makes you feel, that these children are yours, and you've led with that example, Hazel. And for that we're very grateful, and we wish you a long, happy, healthy retirement and lots of singing. Thank you.
Hazel, I'd like to add my thanks and our best wishes. I've only been working with you since 2020, a fraction of the time you've dedicated to Perth and Kinross Council, but I too just think of the thousands of people who've been helped by Hazel and her teams, not just the adults and children who've been directly helped and supported through all the initiatives that Hazel's led, but also their wider circle of family, friends, and the other kids in their classes. To mention just, we did have several reports earlier this morning giving an indication of some of the range of work that Hazel's looked after, but if I just want to mention 3 initiatives where Hazel's led the teams in making a difference. The 16 days, this is the things I've known about since I joined the council, not the early stuff. The 16 days of action on violence against women and girls struck a chord with me. I went on my first Reclaim the Night march as a student in Aberdeen, and it's shocking that women still fear going out at night. We still have to fight, but I salute Hazel and the team for all their work to make women safer and more confident. We've mentioned before the impact of Perth and Kinross's many years of early intervention initiatives, as well as the REACH programme that Caroline mentioned, keeping children in their homes. The early interventions were applauded by the Scottish Children's Reporter Administration last week, when it was noted that there are fewer emergency referrals to the Children's Reporter from Perth and Kinross than elsewhere, not because we have less, but when referrals are made, it only happens when it's appropriate and as a last statutory resort, as it should be, showing that Hazel and the team have developed absolutely the right approach on this. Hazel reported earlier on our huge commitment to the identification and support of young carers, and I think of the patients who will in a few years have the care of a doctor, I think you know who I mean, who was helped to overcome great challenges to fulfil his potential thanks to our recognition and support for young carers. Personally, I've appreciated Hazel's well-prepared contributions to the meetings of Learning and Families Committee, building relationships with the other teams involved in Children, Young People and Families Partnership and across Tayside, where all the time her dedication, compassion and kindness has always shone through everything that she does. So thank you, Hazel. We'll miss you very much, and very best wishes to you and John for a long, happy and healthy retirement.
And just absolutely on that note, to reiterate that we all wish you a very happy, healthy retirement. And I have no doubt that not only will we see you rocking away, as was outlined earlier, but also I'm sure we'll see you with placard in hand as well on many a Reclaim the Night march to come. Hazel, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you very much, and thank you all for your really kind words. I feel incredibly ill prepared to say anything, but other than thank you for that. It's been an amazing journey, and as you said, in 1986, when I was first interviewed for my social work post in Perth and Kinross, I came to Roslyn House and was interviewed by someone who was called the area controller, which maybe gives you an indication of the time frame that we're talking about. And there was about a panel of about 7 people, and I'd actually broken my finger. So I had a splint on my right hand, and the area controller had also had an injury to his left hand. So neither of us could shake either hand. And so we ended up holding hands just to to say hello, which probably was quite an auspicious start to my career. But that went on from, just weeks later, one of the social workers in Pitlochry had a heart attack and they knew he was going to be off for 2 months. So I was asked if, given my newness, would I mind being seconded to Pitlochry? I mean, I could not believe my luck. It was absolutely glorious. It was through July and August of 1986. Beautiful weather. I drove around in Pitlochry and Aberfeldy, seeing all the sights and visiting people out in that part of the world, and it was marvellous. And I was thinking, I'm actually being paid to do this. This is just so good. And as the Provost had said, I spent all of my working career, so that's 38 years as a social worker, working across Tayside, but I've always lived in Perth and travelled elsewhere. So I came back to Perth 9 years ago. And I have to say, I have enjoyed the journey. There's been lots of challenges. It's been a tough time, I think, particularly through COVID. That's been a terrible hardship for everyone. And I don't think anybody can do this job independently. None of us, no man or woman is an island, as they say, and that's absolutely true. And I can say categorically, the support of council for the staff within the social work service has meant so much to people. And when they hear your positive comments about the work they do, how they try and support young people and families and those in the criminal justice support as well, it means a lot. And it may feel like kind words, but I promise you that has real meaning for the people that are hearing it, and many people listening. So I really don't want to dwell on this. You've sat here for a long time listening to lots of different conversations, but just once again to say thank you for all your support over the years. I'm sure I'll see many of you just in the passing. Music will definitely play a big part in my retirement, as will travel. And, I hope to see you all at some point in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, and we'd like to invite you all to join us in the Civic Hall now. Can cut off the live stream. Thank you.